let's start with the headlines first. Supreme Court recalls verdict on retrospective green clearances. So what is this article about? Let's understand the context first. See, in May 2025, Supreme Court gave a verdict saying that if you have any environmental issues, let's say there is a project first. Okay, even before that, I'll give you the larger debate that we are talking about, GS3. So, multiple times when we are discussing this issue of how the syllabus is segregated, GS3 is about economy. And we are trying to put all those subjects which will stop us from getting richer. Paradoxically, they are also responsible for the wealth that we generate. What are we talking about? We're talking about environment. All the resources that you can find are ultimately given by nature. So the technology that will allow us to exploit, that is also studied in GS3. And the security issues, internal security, that will also be studied in GS3 because it will stop us from getting richer. Okay, this is the context of GS3. Now, the present news article that we are talking about is a classic debate between environment versus economy. Should we allow capitalists to destroy our environment a bit because they're producing some money out of it? Yes, no. It's not that easy. If you were to look at it, every single piece of land that is inhabited by human beings was once upon a time some jungle or some plain. It is not as if these buildings that you see today, they just didn't spring up just like that. It's because of man-made activities only. Essentially, every economic activity and the technology that surrounds us is because we have exploited environment. Clear? So, the debate between environment and economy is as old as the earth itself. It's the story of humanity, how we progressed. This is the larger context. So, let's say if there is a industry that is coming up in a certain area, should the government intervene and carry out an impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, which is again part of the syllabus in GS3. What is the purpose? Let's say if a project is starting in some area, don't you think there is a need for a technical study in that area? Whether it will destroy the area or not. Obviously, some damage will happen. But is it so much that the entire ecosystem can never come back to its normalcy? That is the logic of environmental impact assessment. So, in the past, there were some projects which were okayed, which were given a nod without this environmental impact assessment. So, those companies started investing money. Suddenly, in May 2025, the court said that retrospective application, that is, let's say if there is some project that is already set up, should we give environmental clearances to that project? You're already invested in that. The government thought, okay, we have to make this easier for the business folks. So let's give our environmental clearances. The court felt that this is not okay. After a few months, recently, the court said, no, this is not practical because let's say there are many projects to the tune of nearly 20,000 crores. If you are trying to dismantle these projects, not only are you going to let this entire investment go down the gutter, you're not exactly helping the environment either. So the court in a 2:1 judgment, that is, out of the 3 judges, 2 agreed, 1 did not agree. Majority wins. So it's a 3-bench case. They said, okay, we will allow. But remember, this is not a norm. This is an exception. Because there is already so much money invested. Can you do something about your past? Except learning from our lessons. This is what the issue is all about. In short. Now you can go back and read that article. Here, I'm not just stopping at this issue of this specific judgment. The larger context we have to know is environmental jurisprudence. This is the larger theme that you should focus on. What is environmental jurisprudence? What is jurisprudence? Anyone? Any idea of this word? Jurisprudence means the logic or the principles which are used in making laws. So courts use jurisprudence to justify the logic or justify the existence of a law. So let's understand some basic principles of environmental jurisprudence. For example, there is this principle called the no harm principle. You have this principle called the polluter pays. Common but differentiated responsibility. Okay? These kind of principles will determine how we treat our environment. The danger with the present judgment, unless and until the future cases focus on the point that the Chief Justice himself said that this is not a norm, this is an exception. If you normalize this, there is a danger that it might creep into the environmental jurisprudence for future cases. No harm principle, what is it? Simply put, you won't take an action in such a way that it will harm our environment. Simply put, this is the no harm principle. Polluter pays. What does it mean? Let's say there is a factory. That factory is polluting that ecosystem, maybe a water body. Who should pay up? Polluter. Common but differentiated responsibility. More relevant in the context of the climate change talks, UNFCCC talks. In the 5th Conference of Parties at Kyoto, 1997, some of you might not be even born back then, the 5th summit. During that summit, there are mechanisms which the world countries came forward and decided that, let's say, if historically I am polluting more, I will take up more burden. If you are not polluting more historically, I will allow you to pollute more, but I will take the burden and reduce. This is the principle they agreed. Did it happen in reality? No. What is the per capita emissions of India? Compare it with US. Look at the historical statistics. You will see that the principle has been violated time and again. So you can look at this judgment both from a legal standpoint as well as ethical standpoint. Should ethics be practical? So when I say that this action seemed ethical, what is your justification? What is the purpose of ethics? First of all, is ethics about being good only? Ethics is about being practical to create stability. The reasoning you use to arrive at that stability is the determinant of whether that action is stable or not. Ethical or not. So when I say stability, it is a stability that is arrived at through reasoning, not a thoughtless stability where everyone is stagnant. Okay? So now tell me, is this law ethical or not? Is this judgment? In a way? In any other way, is it unethical? Ethical cannot have facets. It's always universal. For a given situation, it is universal. There are people who spend thousands of crores. You can't really change anything about it. You can't undo the damage done to the environment. At the same time, destroying it is not going to restore the ecosystem. What are you going to achieve by destroying the buildings and also the ecosystem? What would be the next best thing? Let it continue so that no future constructions would repeat the same mistake. That is going to create the system a stable system. Don't you think that should be our aim? Okay. So this is a very important law, the important judgment, and a very important theme, environmental jurisprudence. You'll have many case laws. For each of this principle, you will have a case law. And one of the most famous environmentalists who filed many PILs, MC Mehta. So in the infamous Bhopal gas tragedy case, you will see the PILs of this person. Okay, so please make a note of this point. Time to sort out India's serial mess. Okay. This topic pertains to PDS. In our GS3 syllabus, we have under the agriculture public distribution system. What are we distributing here? Some civil supplies, let's say. What do you mean by civil supplies? Rations. Why should we do this? What is the logic? Food security. This is the answer that you will give from a GS3 angle. From a GS2 angle, is this a fundamental right? Is it a fundamental right or a legal right? Do you have a fundamental right called right to food? But do you have a legal right to food? What is the act? National Food Security Act. Do you know the percentage of population that is covered under this? Are you really saying that 67% of the population cannot live without ration? Did we even bother checking if it is really true? Do we have the real-time data? No. That's a different question. Now, when it comes to food security, are we really ensuring food security? We might be, but are we ensuring nutritional security? No. So this is not the same as nutritional security. Why do you think this is happening? Sorry? Recently, Couple of weeks ago, you have the CSIR ICMR study, which said that Indians get nearly 62% of their calorie requirements from carbohydrates. If you take a look at the World Health Organization requirement, it is 40, 30, 70, 30, 100. Carbs, protein, fat. We are overcompensating with carbs because protein is expensive. Okay. What is the implication of this? India is the diabetic capital of the world. This is the reality. If you take a step back and see the policy choices that we have had, that will also explain why this issue is happening. From the supply side, if you see, most of our crop produce, which is procured under this minimum support price regime, belongs to two crops majorly: rice, wheat. Pulses, is it covered? Are you sure? Is pulses covered under MSP or not? Is pulses procured under MSP or not? There is no guarantee. Just because a crop is covered under MSP doesn't mean it will necessarily be procured. That is the central problem. Why is the government procuring only rice and wheat? It's a cultural thing. See, if you have rice or let's say wheat, you have rice or roti in different parts of the country, you'll at least eat it with some salt and maybe some onion or mirchi, or you will not starve. Can you satisfy any person, educated or uneducated, by giving them 1 kg of tur dal? Cook and eat. Why not? It has same carbs, more protein. So it's got something to do with our culture, right? And how did this cultural change happen? Again through policy. If you take a look at Telangana, Karnataka, northern Karnataka, Rayalaseema, these regions, what is the staple food? Ragi. Millets, basically millets. Why do you think so? Why is it a staple food? Geography. Arid geography. We don't have enough water. Rice was something that people used to eat only when there was a festival. Unfortunately, that changed. People started consuming rice, polished rice, which has a very high glycemic index. It's tasty. And it is easier to produce through high yielding varieties. India had a problem back in the 60s. We were not producing enough food. So we had to go for a green revolution. You either starve or eat tasty food. That's a no-brainer. People would want, when you're starving, people would want food. We're giving them tasty food. And I also read one more journal. The entire previous generation was having something called a starvation gene. If you look at generations together under the British rule, we had multiple famines. What is the difference between a famine and a drought? Famine is man-made. That is human-induced problem. What is a drought? It is a meteorological problem. When you don't have enough rainfall, you won't have a produce. But a famine is created because of apathy, political apathy. So famine after famine, coupled with droughts and geography. If you look at any videos during the Indian national movement, you would hardly find anyone with a pot belly. They're literally starving. So the next generation in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, they inherited that starvation gene in such a way that anything that you eat will be stored in our body. Then happened the 1991 revolution, economic revolution of LPG. Millets were replaced with McDonald's. They started, being pushed to the background. They were never tasty. Basmati rice became more accessible. And as a result, LPG era also focused more on services. So there is a structural shift in the economy from the labor intensive agricultural and the manufacturing sector to the much more comfortable office driven service sector. So you have, culturally you have a change in food preferences. Policy wise you have a MSP driven green revolution, which is aiding the consumption culture, and you also have surplus incomes after the LPG era. Taste became a priority, not health. And the sad reality is, all of us know this. And yet, we don't have an alternative. Even if we want to eat healthy, it's just not tasty. Would you like a millet biryani? No, right? So, there's hardly anything that the governments can do when people are not willing to change. You might be voted out of power if you distribute millets at a ration shop. I want to give rice. Okay, fine. I'll be in power. If I'm the government, I'll give you millets. They might as well kill you. This is a policy, cultural, geographical, economical issue. It's not just a linear issue where this is the reason, that's why we are not able to see a shift in our consumption patterns. You just can't say that. And that's exactly the kind of argument that this article takes up. It says that we have a problem with our procurement because, see what's happening. The writer says that in Tamil Nadu, there is a particular paddy variety which is procured by the government usually. But the problem is, we don't want to procure it. We are already having 5 times the stock that we ought to have. We can't export because there is no export market for this quality of rice. Not only is it an ecological disaster, it is also an economic disaster and also a lapse of governance. So, should the governments do anything about it? Of course they have to. What will they do? You plan better. You incentivize, you diversify. See, we are seeing a cultural problem, supply side problem, economic problem, policy problem, ecological problem. All of it is about a choice that we should take. If you take the choice that I will procure millets, don't you think the farmers will produce millets? It's actually easier. You don't require as much resources. And thankfully, thanks to the ultra rich now, we have a market for millets. It's about taking it to the masses now. See, you always see the consumption cycles emulating the rich. It's called, in sociology, it's called the so-called aspirational lifestyle. At one point of time, Telugulo antaru chaddannam. The same thing, if you go to a 5-star restaurant now and you read the menu, I was actually surprised. For a minute, I did not understand what he was talking about. Probiotic fermented deep soaked rice with a tinge of jeera and something else. And when I tried to process it, then I realized he was talking about this chaddannam gurinchi maatladutadu. That's what he's talking about. And it's priced 850 rupees. It becomes an aspiration because it's extremely healthy, provided you consume it in the right way at the right time. We should all go back to the basics. Why are we trying to overcomplicate our lives? Because it's a consumption-led economy. There's only so much that you can consume. We can't buy health. As much as we are a part of the system, it takes human choice to regulate ourselves. And it's extremely difficult. You walk out, you have a choice between a very healthy fruit and a samosa. And every day, you are walking out of a study hall, reading some news article like this. You're extremely frustrated. Your mind is, already frustrated. And you're again forced to take a choice between samosa and probably apple. Very few of us will pick up an apple. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm going to pick up samosa. But we shouldn't. Why? Because it's a choice. It's all going to have a consequence. We know it. How do we make our lives better? It is all about this micro choices on a day-to-day basis. Why did I philosophize this article? Because I don't like the tone that everything is blamed upon the government. Why do you think the government wants to take that headache? What will they do with all that excess rice? Are they going to sell it outside? Are they going to do some scam? Maybe in the olden days that was a huge thing. Politicians have moved on from that kind of setup now. Even they want to find new ways because it's not going to work out. Everybody is producing in bulk. Every state has its own procurement now. We don't know what to do with it. Of course, it's going to help the farmers to an extent. But the overall impact is it's a policy as well as an ecological disaster. Of course, it's an economic disaster, as you can see. Look at the budgets of every state. Food subsidy bills, you can see at the center. You will realize what I'm talking about. Every year, 50,000 crore worth grains are getting wasted in FCI godowns. They are either thrown away in the oceans or now, thanks to the E20 policy, you can combine it with the, ethanol and, improve the car service economy because it will help the automobile industry too. See, it's a circular economy. A new definition to the circular economy. But that's not how we manage our resources, right? What do we do about it? I think you're smart enough to figure out the answers. Get back to the basics. Unpacking the global happiness rankings. See, there are two ideas that you need to know: economic growth and economic development. What is development? What is the idea of development? See, there are two ways to answer this question: textbook and something that comes from your heart. I would prefer a textbook answer for the sake of this class. Maybe if you want to have a off the record discussion, we can have it later outside. But what is development? Economic development. Okay, I'll be very specific. According to Amartya Sen, that's the traditional idea of development. Development as freedom, where we are free to explore our potential. And once you do this, you are expected to be happy. All right. So ideally, don't you think this is what we should be focusing on? Being happy. But this is very subjective. When you don't clear prelims exam, the next time when you write the prelims exam and you clear it, you are happy. But you flunk in the mains exam, again you are unhappy. You clear the mains exam next time, then you fail in the interview. Again, you are unhappy. You clear the interview, but you don't get into the IAS. You end up in IRS. Again, you are unhappy. You write the exam again. You get into the IAS, but you get in Northeast cadre. You are again unhappy. What do you do now? What is happiness then? It's an elusive pursuit. And because of this reason, we don't bring it to discussions in quantifiable metrics. You can't really make everyone happy, but somehow some policymakers figured that it would be a nice discussion to have on what happiness is. And you have Finland, which is declared as the most happiest country. But the thing with India in this gross national happiness index is that it keeps on fluctuating. In 1 year, we will be at 90. Then we go to 140. Then we come to 120. Do you really think your life has changed in the last 1 year? Did it get worse? Did it get better? We don't know. It depends on where you are. So how do you know this ranking is right? Should we take this ranking seriously? It would be nice to have a quantifiable metric on what happiness means. But do you remember someone surveying us? Did someone call you up or send a message on WhatsApp? Hey, are you happy? We don't know who were surveyed in this. And yet, we'll be learning about World Happiness Report. And India stands at so and so place. How do you arrive at that quantifiable metric? You don't really know. This is the problem of our government. International organizations will try to promote this idea and will probably sometimes these metrics will act like good PR report. We would have accepted it, except that sometimes these reports rank Pakistan above us. And there is a logic to it also sometimes. You have such low expectations that even something, maybe a video game record posted by the government that they won the war, might make them happy too. That is what the author eventually says here sometimes. What is this idea of happiness that we need to focus upon? So if this is such a pointless concept, why are we even reading about it? See, one element of a bureaucrat or any rational mind would be to not dismiss an idea entirely. When an idea is being taken up, there is always some merit to it. Is there anyone who is going to disagree with the fact that we should all aspire for happiness of our citizens? In fact, if you look at the Constitution of US or the opening lines of the US Constitution, you will actually find the word pursuit of happiness. Coincidentally, that is also the title of the famous movie. Pursuit of happiness. That pursuit is what we should be focusing on. India should also focus on that pursuit of happiness. What should we focus upon? If we can make our people not happy, happier than what they were. This is what we can pick up from this article. So what is the article really saying? See, on one hand, you have India, which has a 3.7 trillion GDP, which is placed lower than Pakistan, which has a 350 billion GDP. So is money alone a metric of happiness? Not really. Somewhere in this, we are missing the point. What is the point? The point is, happiness is about perception. If Indians say they are not happy, are they trying to say we don't have enough money? No, that's not what we are saying. We are trying to say our aspirations are higher than what we actually have at this point of time. If you ask someone who is probably born in 70s, 60s and 70s, their life would have been settled by the time they get their first job, no matter how much it pays. And today, we have people quitting multinational companies to pursue an exam like this. Is it just because of money, or is it about satisfaction too? Good interview answer. Satisfaction. In reality, it's not about money too. They don't know what to do with it sometimes. It's about an aspiration. Human beings inherently don't like to be treated equally. We are all competitive. But what is the direction of that competition? You know this Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Roti, kapda, makan, and finally we will end at self-actualization. So you will compete, run to acquire as much wealth as you can, and then realize it's pointless. This is not what we want. And we give it up. No, I'm not talking about a Mahesh Babu script, the next movie script, but this is what usually happens. This is how human history evolved. So if a nation were, see, this is how you can bring about perspectives even in your essay. The reason why I cover all these issues is because you won't get a question, what is gross happiness index? No. UPSC evolved from that. Or maybe we don't know. UPSC can surprise us. If that is the case, you can by heart this definition that is given somewhere here. Where is that? Yeah, Cantrell ladder. Gallup World Polls Cantrell ladder, where people rate their lives from 0 to 10, linked to GDP per capita, social support, life expectancy, freedom, generosity, corruption perception. If you have a good memory, please by heart it. Otherwise, if you are like me, ignore. So let's take a look at each of that metric. GDP per capita, fairly quantifiable. Social support. What do you mean by social support? Sorry? Now we are moving into the domain of GS1 Indian society. In that context, what is the institution that creates that social support? Family. Indian idea of social support is different from the Western idea. In the Western part, in the happiest countries, you will see that social support essentially means the kind of benefits, social security benefits that you get from the state. But the definition is not the same in India. In Indian context, social support means the strength of the family. Inherently, we have this joint family system. And with globalization, we are witnessing a breakdown of this traditional joint family system. So, is the metric right in capturing that? Just because we don't give a pension, does it mean that we are an unhappy nation? Are we capturing the opinion of, let's say, a software engineer working in Gachibowli or someone who left his home behind in his hometown, away from his parents? Do you think he's happy? He's getting his PF. He might as well get his retirement fund too, because he's contributing to the mutual funds. Is he going to be happy? You don't know. You're not capturing that. Then how can you say India is not having that social, support? Yes, of course, it's true that our traditional structures are getting dismantled. But the methodology that is used to capture through the Western lens, that's a problem. Now, corruption perception, that's very subjective. Do you have any quantifiable metric to say this is Do you think anyone who has given a bribe will come out and accept that I gave a bribe? Anyone who took a bribe, will he accept? Then how would you define it? If you ask someone, is there corruption? People will be abusing the government. But if you go and ask them on a personal level, did you bribe someone? I'll take down a record. Stand in front of them with a pen and paper and ask, how many times did you give a bribe? I'm entering into a record. They're like, no, boss, please put it down. I did not give a bribe. India is a very corruption-free country. How would you measure perception? It's difficult, right? So, when citizens have higher expectations, they are going to be unhappy. So, in a country like ours, is it fair to capture this without any quantifiable metrics or through the metrics driven by the Western idea of society? It's not just about the services that the state gives, because we are at a different phase in our economic history. So it's not always fair to compare ourselves with the Western world and say that we are not doing well, because it's not going to help anywhere. The metrics should be apples versus apples, oranges versus oranges. That's the takeaway from this article. NH 701A highway is an ecological risk. See, this article is unique because usually when you are talking about ecological risks, we tend to focus on environment syllabus. But this is specifically talking about Himalayan ecosystem, and the reasoning for saying why this is an ecological risk is mainly geographical. So it can pretty much be asked in geography. Okay? How can you expect a question on these lines? Examine the ecological risks posed by developmental projects in Himalayan or mountainous ecosystems. Or if they ask specifically, Himalayan ecosystem. People will be writing about avalanches, landslides, cloudburst. What else will they write? Glacial lake outburst floods. They'll talk about all the disasters which are the consequences. But why is it a risk in the first place? It's because of the geography. There are some fragile geographical points which should not be disturbed, or if when they are disturbed, will eventually lead to disasters. There is a possibility of a hazard. That hazard's existence is the risk. You push it to the brink, it becomes a disaster. So this article is talking about one such highway which can pose an ecological risks because it defies the logic of geography. What is this? It's a national highway which is supposed to make life easier by cutting down the time. In a bid to do this, it is connecting, this road is getting connected to the strategic Jammu Poonch sector, which will reduce the time and make lives easy, provided the road stays intact. Why am I saying that it might not stay intact? Because we are talking about a mountainous road in a ecologically fragile region. Why is it ecologically fragile? Reason number one, from geographical standpoint, tectonically unsafe. It's a very young fold mountain which is still undergoing tectonic shift. So you might have an earthquake at any given point. Problem number one. Problem number two. This is the ecosystem which will feed many rivers. So the glacial, distribution, the river water feed can get disrupted because of the cutting of mountains which defy the ecological logic. It will disrupt the flowing patterns of these rivers. Problem number 3. The slope here sometimes can give in. Like if you cut down a mountain, because of the nature of the rock, there can be a possibility of a landslide. So the amount of money required for keeping it intact and the risk even after that is very high. So will it justify? Not really. Is there an environmental impact assessment? Ideally, do you think there should be an environmental impact assessment? Yes. The original environmental impact assessment, according to the 2006 notification, indeed covers this highways. But what happened later? In 2022, the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change created an exception. What's that exception? Anything within the LOC area, 100 kilometers, just see the number, 100 kilometers. Within the 100 kilometers range of LOC, on the national security grounds, they created this exemption. So, this project is exempted from environmental impact assessment. It got away with it. So, you should also note that just because environmental impact assessment is bypassed, it doesn't mean that geological impact assessment is also bypassed. The projects should still be geologically viable. Why you don't see mining of coal in Kashmir despite having the highest grade of coal, anthracite coal? Why? It's just not sustainable. The mines will just cave in and you will literally see an instant death there. It's just not viable. Same thing here also. Many geological surveys say that it's a very fragile zone, it's very risky to carry out these projects. So from that standpoint, you can say and conclude that these projects are ecologically risky. Okay? So if you want to justify why they are risky, don't tell me the consequences of the risk. They are not risky because you will have a flood there. It's a consequence. Risk is something that did not manifest. Flood is a consequence. Risk already happened. Risk is something that did not happen. This is not a risk. It's a consequence. So there is a difference between disaster related geography and disaster management. GS1, GS3. Don't mix them both in your answers. Yeah, possibility is a risk. But why is there a possibility? The answer lies in geography, not in environment. I mean, the subject of geography, not in the GS3 environment syllabus. Okay? The last two articles, what can we expect from the local bodies? See, recently you've had the Finance Commission report, which is for the next few years, 26 to 31. And this particular Finance Commission is giving more weightage to is supposed to give more weightage to the local bodies. Why? You saw the rise in urbanization. You don't have a proper governance architecture at the local level. State finance commissions literally don't exist. Cities can't generate their own revenue. This context. If you don't get untied funds, what do you mean by untied funds? Finance Commission says that if you do this work, I'll give you so and so amount of money. Problem is cities don't have the capacity to do that work. So you need to give them more money to develop that capacity also. Last time, roughly around 4 to 5% of the funds were given as tied funds, 60% of it, if I'm not wrong, as far as this article says. We need to change that. We need to devolve more money to the local level. At the same time, this can't continue forever. You really need to empower the local bodies to raise their own revenue. And the only way we can do that is if the existing finance commission incentivizes the state finance commission to generate revenue. So more on this, we'll again get multiple such articles. So don't worry about it. What changes are planned for the Plant Variety Act? See, this is about the law that pertains to seeds. You are a government, let's say. And with respect to seeds, there are three challenges. What are those three challenges? On one hand, you have a breeder, a scientist, let's say for example, who created a very good seed by doing some research, and that research costed him something. He wants to monetize it because he has spent so much money on it. And on the other hand, you have a farmer who traditionally depends on these seeds. As a state, you have the moral imperative to protect this farmer too, and at the same time also protect the breeder. And then you cannot ignore the larger reality of biodiversity. If that is not there, neither the breeder nor the farmer nor you, the government, you won't exist. How do we balance this? This is the challenge that this act is supposed to handle. Now, recently, there is this change proposed by the government to the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmer Rights Act. That act establishes a authority. So the definition of farmer, who is a farmer? That farmer is exempted from any strict punishments for the use of these seeds. That is supposedly changing. Okay, a breeder gets rights to the creation for almost 16 or 18 years according to the law. Just check once. If it is a tree or a vine, that seed will have 18 years protection. If it is some normal plant, 12 to 15 years. Just go back and check once. For that many years, you can monetize. After that, anybody can use, just like a patent. But now that is also changing for the farmers. Maybe they will have to, wait for a longer period to use them, which will put them in a very vulnerable situation, given how climate change is changing the trajectory of production. Okay, this is the context. Once the changes actually happen, we will read more about it. But if you want to read the basics, it's already covered here. I'm pretty sure it will come back again in the news. So we will cover it then. Maybe sometime around February, after the budget is over, you will see news on this again. Okay, that's about it. That's the end of the news articles today. Thank you.